When you think of the Rarest Chao, what comes to mind? Of course, the Rarest Chao would be one that very few people actually have. And I'm talking about legit Chao, so hacking, action replay, or any of that type of stuff doesn't count. One that comes to mind are the Chaos Chao, since it could take quite some time to get your Chao to evolve into one. Another that comes to mind could be the Shiny Jewel Chao, since to get these you need to breed a shiny colored Chao with a Jewel Chao. Also, they can look completely different depending on which version of the game you play, and in some versions they're either not in the game or just unobtainable without modding. However, these aren't even close to being among the rarest Chao, except for maybe the shiny jewels that you need to breed the more expensive Chao colors to get, such as a black shiny jewel Chao for example. Speaking of the more expensive Chao colors, let's take a look at the most expensive Chao egg you could buy in each game. Since these need the most amount of emblems to unlock and the highest amount of rings to purchase, they kinda have to be up there in terms of rarity. In Sonic Adventure 2 Battle and Sonic Adventure DX, the most expensive Chao egg is the shiny black egg. This egg costs 20,000 rings to purchase, and the unlock requirement is to get all emblems in each game. So for Sonic Adventure 2 Battle, that would be 180 emblems, and for Sonic Adventure DX, that would be 130 emblems. In the Tiny Chao Garden, the most expensive egg is the Onyx Egg, which costs 20,000 rings to purchase. In the Dreamcast version of Sonic Adventure 2, the Moonchild is the one that costs the most at 30 emblems. That doesn't really sound like a lot, but Moonchild were only ever legitimately obtainable in the Dreamcast version of the game. And on the Dreamcast version, you had to connect to the internet to download these Chao from the black market. So that means since the servers are down now, there's no way of getting a legit Moonchild unless someone who got one back in the day gives it to you. So this, combined with the fact that not only can you still get shiny black Chao or Onyx Chao in the other versions of the game, but also the Dreamcast version just being less popular than the GameCube version, I think it would be safe to say that there's less legit Moonchild out there than there are shiny black or Onyx Chao. However, even with all of that, I could definitely say that the Moonchild is not the rarest Chao. First, let's talk about character Chao, that being the Tails, Knuckles, and Amy Chao. I'm sure you've at least heard of these before since they're well known and quite popular, not only for their cool look and rarity, but also for the unique way in which they're obtained. Out of these three, the Tails Chao is probably the one that's most accessible, since it's the only one that's available outside of Japan. I actually have one of these myself, and the way you get them outside of Japan is only through Phantasy Star Online on the GameCube, where after finding a Chao in the mission, the Fake in Yellow, you'll be able to download a tiny Chao Garden onto your Game Boy Advance, which contains the Tails Chao in it, which you can then transfer to either Sonic Adventure 2 Battle or Sonic Adventure DX. And that's the only way to get a legit Tails Chao if you're outside of Japan. There's only two other ways of getting the Tails Chao, as well as the Knuckles and Amy Chao, but like I said, these are only for the Japanese versions of the game. One way would be through the GameCube Software eCatalog Summer 2003 disc. It's basically just a demo disc that would showcase GameCube games that were coming out at the time. This disc also lets you download a Tails, Knuckles, or Amy Chao to your Game Boy Advance, which you could then transfer into SADX or SA2B. The other way of getting these would be to go to certain Japanese events where Sega would put up a booth and let people download these Chao into their GBA. These three Chao would all start with all A rank stats at level 1 with 250 points. They also act as Chaos Chao, so they're all immortal and can breed with other Chao. I think it's arguable whether these are more rare than the Moonchild or not. While you could still go out and get a legit Tails Chao through Phantasy Star Online, or all three of them through the eCatalog disc if you want, as those still pop up on sites like eBay quite often. It's totally possible that due to the low emblem requirement for these Moonchild, that there's just tons of legit ones running around in people's old save files from back when the servers are still up. And while the GameCube version of SA2 is definitely more popular than the Dreamcast version, especially for playing Chao Garden, I really don't think that more copies of this demo disc exist than copies sold of the original Dreamcast version of Sonic Adventure 2. So while there was definitely a larger install base for these Moonchild back in the day, it still kinda has the edge over the character Chao since you just can't get legit ones anymore, unless, like I said earlier, someone who got one back in the day gives it to you. While you could still easily get character Chao through buying an eCatalog disc secondhand for the Japanese versions, or using Phantasy Star Online for the Tails Chao if you're outside of Japan. Either way, no matter whichever one you think is the rare one out of these, neither of them can be considered the rarest. This is because there's actually a set of event exclusive Chao that are barely even known about. This is because the very little information about them could only be found in Japanese circles, and there's no evidence on the internet that these were even real. At least it could be easily found. That is until just 2 days before I started recording this video. The only claims of the existence of this event exclusive set of Chao, at least it could be found by the English speaking community, originates from the Japanese fan site Chowler.net. On their page for the character Chao, they have the standard Tails, Amy, and Knuckles Chao. But after that, they have 3 more character Chao listed, that being Shiny Sonic Chao, Shiny Shadow Chao, and Shiny Tails Chao. That's right, this site is claiming that a legit Shiny Tails Chao actually exists, and it was only distributed at one of these events. And I know what you're thinking about the Shiny Sonic and Shiny Shadow Chao. You can get a Shiny Sonic or Shadow Chao pretty easily in the game. So what makes these event distributed ones any special? Well, according to the Chowler page, these two start out with 2,000 run points. So that means if you max out their run level, they'd actually exceed the game's stat point limit. Now that's pretty much everything about them that's stated on this specific page. So that alone wasn't really 100% proof that these were real, since there was no hard evidence like which event it was at or pictures of the Chao at the event being given out. But then another Chowler page was uncovered with an image of a Shiny Tails Chao presumably uploaded by someone who had one. Now while at first glance you can assume that this could have just been hacked in or something like that, this page specifically states that these were distributed at the 17th Next Generation World Hobby Fair. Upon hearing this, I instantly went out to try and find any images of this event. And while you could tell that Sonic had a presence there from the first few Google image results of it, I had no luck finding images of the Chao distribution booth. Luckily though, not too long after this, clear images of the Sonic booth at this event were actually found. And I'd like to thank Erubu from Chao Island for being the one to uncover these images. The Japanese gaming news site, GameWatch, actually covered the event and uploaded a bunch of pictures, including those of the Sega booth. And one of them actually shows the Chao distribution with the caption, "The annual Rare Chao download corner. This time Glossy Tails Chao can be downloaded for the first time." And there you can clearly see on the screen that alongside the Knuckles and Amy Chao, there's a Shiny Sonic Chao, a Shiny Shadow Chao, and a Shiny Tails Chao. Although these images are apparently from the 18th World Hobby Fair and not the 17th, so whoever uploaded that image of the Shiny Tails to Chowler and said it was the 17th, probably just made a mistake. And now with this clear proof, I can definitively say that these 3 are equally the rarest Chao. Now there's still a few unanswered questions regarding them. One being the exact stats of the Tails Chao, which are never specified by the Chowler page. Although I do think it's safe to assume that its starting stats would be the same as a regular Tails Chao. And another question I have is if the Shiny Sonic and Shiny Shadow Chao act as Chaos Chao like the other special event Chao, or if they just act as a regular Chao and can breed and reincarnate and all of that. I'm leaning towards no on this one because I feel like the Chowler page would have mentioned that, since it did mention their starting run stats, and I feel like the insane run stats were given to them as a compensation for not being a Chaos Chao like the rest of the event Chao. Although that is just my assumption. But we can't know for sure unless someone who actually got one of these uploads some images or something online, as well as proof that they actually got them from this event and they weren't just hacked in. And unless that already exists online and we just haven't found it, it's very unlikely that that'll happen, considering that this event took place in June of 2003. That's before even I was born, to put things into perspective. Another interesting thing is that there's probably a special distribution disc out there somewhere. This distribution is definitely running on a GameCube as seen by the images, and the Chao selection menu looks completely different from the other events, as well as the demo disc distribution. So there's definitely a special software disc inside that GameCube that as far as we know was only used at this event. And unless they threw it away, somehow lost it, or just don't have it for any other reason, this disc is probably locked up in a vault somewhere at Sega's offices, wherever they keep all their other old stuff. It would be cool if somehow, even after all this time, one of these discs surfaces online, as it would be a cool collector's item for anyone who has it, and any documentation regarding these Chao and their distribution is always a plus. I've always wondered why Sega never did any Chao distribution events in the West, where Sonic has a much larger following. but I do still think it's cool that they even did these in the first place, and that there's some really rare Chao out there because of this. And it's also cool to be able to confirm the existence of this event-exclusive set of Shiny Sonic, Shiny Shadow, and Shiny Tails, which aren't even known about by the majority of people who've played these games, and are undoubtedly the Rarest Chao.